Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink, it is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Welcome to day 16 of Teaser Season for patch 3.27 and the upcoming Keepers of the Flame expansion. Today, we're going to be talking about Bloodline Ascendancies again. Why? Because Grinding Gear Games have put out all of the Bloodline Ascendancies, including the secret one that they hadn't talked about yet. This actually was not put out in a news post like they often do, but instead it was posted in the JSON files, which are things that they put out for community tool builders. For example, Path of Building. Path of Building needs the JSON character power passive tree, and this is what it looks like when it's put into a visualizer. I'll put a link down in the description below to POEDB's visualizers for these if you want to have a look at them yourself. Now, this information, of course, contains a little bit that we did not previously have, and also contains a couple of little changes that have taken place. We also got the Atlas passive tree. I'll also link that one down below. This doesn't seem to have any real surprises in it, just things that were already announced, although obviously the texture is a little bit different. Note that if you looked at this in the first 20 or 30 minutes after the link was originally created to it, which is when I was initially recording this video, not when I came through for my editing draft, you may realize that the version that you got then was actually not correct. However, it has been updated since. So let's talk about the character power passive tree. We've actually got the whole tree now if you want to check out anything particular in it. The thing that's new and shiny is, of course, the Bloodline Ascendancies. These have all been placed somewhere southwest of the tree. So let's talk about the things that have changed in meaningful ways or simply in descriptive ways. Firstly, all three Delirium keystones have had their names changed. Grinding Gear Games didn't want to have any real-world neurological terms used here, I think, so they've decided to change them. That didn't happen. You're the crazy one, and it wasn't me. All of these are very much true to Tangmazu's feel as a gaslighter extraordinaire. However, one of these has had a mechanical change. That didn't happen. This is the defensive node. This is the one that has a very severe drawback on it. However, that drawback has been slightly lessened. Non-cluster, non-passage jewels socketed in your passive skill tree have no effect. The line non-passage is new. Passage jewels are ones that allow you to jump around the passive tree in various ways. A couple of examples of these: Impossible Escape, Thread of Hope, Intuitive Leap. All of these allow you to take nodes that are not currently connected to your tree, and it looks like an explicit exception has been made to the wording of that didn't happen to allow you to use these powerful tools. This just makes this notable better. It's already very strong defensively, but at a very high price, and I do think it's something that is worth experimenting with. Next, in terms of things that have received mechanical changes, we have the Wild Bear in Oshabi. This is now plus 20 maximum rage, lose all rage on reaching maximum rage, and gain Wild Savagery, previously Adrenaline, for 1 second per 10 rage lost this way. So this buff does 4 things for you while you've got this Wild Savagery: 100% increased physical damage, 10% increased action speed, you are immune to stun, and your hits ignore enemy physical damage reduction. Is this strong? It does something useful, but it comes with a pretty severe drawback. Firstly, this is costing you 2 Ascendancy points. That's a very real opportunity cost. But then on top of that, you're also setting your average rage to something that's less than it would otherwise have been. So for instance, if your current maximum rage is 30, then with plus 20 maximum rage, your new maximum rage is 50. But every time you hit 50, you're going to reset back to 0. I've done the numbers on this, and if your rage is stepping up by ones, by multiples of 1, then this is going to be equivalent to having half of your new maximum rage minus a half. So from 0 to 50, that would be 25 is half of your new maximum rage, minus a half for 24.5. That's the average amount of rage you'll have. However, if you step up by larger amounts than 1, then you might find that you actually end up averaging a bit lower, because you might go 0 to 17 to 34 to 51, which immediately resets back down to 0. And in that situation, your average is 17. That was engineered to be one of the worst case scenarios, where a multiple of your rage step is just a sliver over your new maximum. So that's a very bad case. But if you were to be going up by 11s, your average rage would end up as 22. All in all, you're losing quite a bit of maximum rage with this. And whilst you're definitely getting something out of this with Wild Savagery, I don't feel you're getting enough of a holistic all-around package here to warrant the investment of 2 Ascendancy points, plus sacrificing the amount of average rage that you've got. There will, however, be corner cases where you can use this well, and those will mostly revolve around players who are very mechanically skilled and are able to manage their rage very carefully. There'll be ways to do that. Hateforge is one example, as is attacking with one skill that's linked to rage support, and then flipping over to another skill that does not generate rage. Overall though, I don't think you're getting enough of a payoff here to warrant the investment that's required. Next, we have Herald Lycia, which has had some changes. The Elder Flesh, lots of people talking about this node, and we discussed in one of the previous videos how it does have pretty strong synergy with Essence Worm and the Elementalist Notable that relates to Heralds. However, very important to note that the small node has been changed on this one. So Farewell to Flesh still does exactly what it was originally teased to do, but Herald and minion damage now replaces Herald buff effect. For the sorts of builds that are getting maximum value out of Farewell to Flesh, this is definitely worse than the original plan node was, but it's still very strong, and in fact, I feel like this is pretty much a mandatory choice for builds that are interested in going down this route. So very, very strong still, just slightly less strong than it was originally going to be. After this, we have the mysterious 10th Ascendancy, the one that we knew nothing about. And this is the Breachlord Ascendancy. So they all have their names, Olroth Bloodline, Lycia Bloodline, and this one is just called Breachlord. Here we have cold damage leading into Tull of the Blizzard. Now, very important to note here, people are going to be tilted badly by this. There is a cold version, there is a lightning version of this node. There is no fire version of this node. There is something else that you might consider using on a fire damage build, but you're not going to get a reflected version of this. Tull of the Blizzard, 30% unconditional freeze duration. Very conditional, +2 to the level of all cold skill gems. However, the condition on this, you need to have 4 Foulborn unique items equipped. I actually think that is a fairly big ask, but the payoff is definitely there. On top of this, your hits ignore enemy monster cold resistances if all equipped rings are cryonic rings. Cryonic rings are one of the new base types that's being added in the new expansion. We believe that they drop as scoured items from breach monsters, and maybe also as rare items. The key thing that I think will really make this explosively good is if it is possible to equip a unique cryonic ring that is Foulborn. I don't know if this is possible as yet. That would depend upon such an item existing, and also on it being something that you might want to use on a build that's trying to scale cold gem levels. Now, we also have Esh of the Storm. Esh of the Storm does the same thing, except instead of giving freeze duration, it is giving 30 intelligence. Otherwise, it is just a lightning copy of the Tull version. I want to come back to this text about your hits ignoring monster resistances and other similar effects that may not apply to hits, such as Rumiko in the Chieftain Ascendancy. These are way better than they look. The reason that these sometimes get overlooked is that you click them in Path of Building and you go, oh, look, my character is now worse, it does less damage than it did. But Path of Building is optimizing for fighting against the Maven. If your build is optimizing to fight against the Maven, then yes, you should instead go with a double curse setup, elemental exposure, and whatever else is appropriate to your build. But if you're running general mapping instead, one of the things that will really catch you out is that it's become much more common to encounter massively overcapped monsters in the game in the recent times. So there's a red map mod that gives 40% tri-res to enemies, also gives them 25% chaos res, but when you actually run a map with that, it's probably closer to 60% or more, because even though the amount of map mod effect on the tree has decreased, it is still pretty high and you're probably taking most of it. So you can wind up facing a situation where the monster is not 50% lightning resistance, and then you can double curse it and get it down to -20. Instead, you might be facing a monster that's got 170% lightning resistance. And in that situation, double curse plus exposure, well, guess what? It's still resist capped. It's still sitting at 75%. But if instead you've got Esh of the Storm, well, suddenly you're getting damage through as though they've got 0 resist. You've just quadrupled your damage against that monster with this particular node. What it doesn't necessarily make you do more damage, but it makes you do damage more reliably, which can be extremely important. And ultimately, that's the reason that when we start talking about Otherworldly Appendages, which we'll jump into now, I do not recommend taking this on a Righteous Fire Chieftain. Even though take 15% less physical and fire damage is incredible, this is not where you want to have it, because it's going to undermine your best tool for dealing with ultra high resistance monsters, which are just much more common in the current endgame than they were a few years ago. Let's talk about Otherworldly Appendages though. You get to choose 2 elements, and you take 15% less damage of them. Most of the time, physical is going to be one of these, because physical hits are probably scarier than the others. However, if you're doing certain Uber Pinnacle bosses in particular, you might find that this is phenomenal there. Take 15% less cold damage with at least 1 Tull Graft applied to you. Well, that is absolutely fantastic if you're going up against the Uber Shaper. The time I think this is at its absolute best is when you're using Sublime Vision and one of the Purity Auras. At this point, you're going to be converting a lot of damage that you're taking into one element, most commonly fire, but you can go with the others. And you're then going to be able to say, all right, well, I'm just going to take a whole bunch less fire damage, a whole bunch less physical damage. And while lightning and cold damage, I'm not getting my defenses against those from Otherworldly Appendages, but I'm getting them from the rest of my character. So lots to look at here. And I haven't even touched on nearby enemies taking 100% increased damage from graph skills, which I think is mostly going to be fun, but it will also be fairly powerful. Lots to enjoy here in the Breachlord Ascendancy, and I do think that this will be taken fairly often. Tull of the Blizzard and Esh of the Storm don't fit every build, but if they fit, they're fantastic. And you have Otherworldly Appendages as an option as well. I wanted to put in something that's not explicitly news related, but that I think is important advice for people to keep in mind. There is a lot of very good advice going around in the Path of Exile subreddit at the moment about unwavering vision, and people advocating that you should take it because it will make you clear the Atlas faster. Now, this is true for a certain category of player, but it is not universal advice that applies to everyone. And the reason for that is that unwavering vision has a drawback. Scarabs cannot be found in your maps. Essentially, you are asking the game, please delete all the loot that drops in the form of scarabs, and instead give me a few additional points to spend on the Atlas passive tree early. I will then, in exchange, use that in order to get more maps to drop. If you're one of the first people that gets into maps, this is an absolutely phenomenal deal for you. Take this every time in solo self-found. Take this in Trade League if you're a fast player. One of the first 5 or 10,000 maps, absolutely take it. But, very important but, if you are not one of those fast players, then you don't want to take this, because all you're doing with this keystone is instructing the game, please delete all the loot that drops for me in the form of scarabs so that I can't sell it to other players and so that I can't then go and buy maps using that currency or buy other character upgrades using that currency. The reason that I wanted to bring this up is that there is a lot of good advice that goes around the Path of Exile community that may not be appropriate to you. Sometimes it can be very hard to tell the two apart, but just try and get a sense as to who the guide is written for and then decide whether it's applicable to you or not as a result of that. Now, the final piece of news for today, unless something else comes out later after I've already posted this video, is the Keepers of the Flame launch Twitch drops that Grinding Games are running. This is a promo that's taking place on Twitch, and basically, if you are unable to play the game, or if you like to watch someone else play the game while you play the game, then you'll be able to get more and more microtransactions depending on what you do with respect to watching people stream it on Twitch. So, Week 1 Twitch drops. These are available if you were to watch the streams for a combined 3 hours during the first week of launch. And the exact times are linked in the description below, because the exact times, it's not precisely the moment of launch to 1 week later. It's something slightly different to that. But the details are down in the description below. And this is the Exile's Treasurer Hideout decoration, which is a bit of a meh, and the Breachlord's Claw character effect, which is kind of cool. The second week are going to be the Zesht Slam Rare Finisher effect. Rare Finisher effects I think I like a lot more than unique monster finisher effects in the game. And then you'll get that after 3 hours during week 2. But the other promo, and honestly the one that streamers genuinely really love, is that they're going to be giving away the Incarnation of Dread Portal effect as a reward for purchasing or gifting 2 Twitch subscriptions of any tier during the promotional period. So all the details are listed down in the description below. And essentially, this is Grinding Gear Games doing a thank you to people like myself, and also all of the other people that put together content within the Path of Exile community. There's also a little bit of administrative trivia that if you've never done one of these Twitch promos before, or if it's been a long time, you probably want to read about. So again, link down in the description below. And that is the end of today's video, barring the gems actually coming out. Why do we not have anything to discuss in the way of gems? Well, Grinding Gear Games put out a tweet saying, hey, these are running a bit late. We're probably not going to have them today. They might come out today, but unfortunately, I'm busy IRL. So if they do come out today, then I'm not going to be able to upload anything about them until a good 10 or 12 hours have passed. I'm going to leave it there. May your Varlobs have interesting results.